Hi there, welcome to Learn Your Linux with me, Carl Montague. I'm going to be teaching you how to get to grips with your Linux system. This is for people who have like a Linux system, rather Linux Mint or Ubuntu or something like that, don't know how it works, want to know how it works. How to use the command line like a proper pro Linux user. So we're going to start with a little history lesson before we dive straight in. Linux and the GNU operating system are all stem from the original, which is Unix. This was created in the 70s. Unix is an operating system that is multi-user, which means that lots of people can log into it at once. It's multitasking, which means that it can run or pretend to or seem to run more than one program at once. An operating system like Unix, this is a big simplification. Operating system like Unix is made of lots of different programs, but they come in two kind of categories. There's like the kernel and the shell. Now the kernel is all the parts of all the bits of software that talk directly to like the machinery, so your memory management or your hard drives, and then your monitor, whether it reads your mouse, what all that's doing, and anything that you're interacting with as a human is the shell. So if you're typing in commands or if you're clicking on things, that's all shell. That's just something for you to know, that you can have like a Unix version of operating system that has one kernel that uses another kind of shell. There's lots of different shells you can get, and lots of different kernels you can get, and lots of different other software you can get for Unix. But the original Unix was written for a machine like that. That's the kind of computer they were written for in the 70s. So it's a 60s computer actually, but it's a big monster of a machine, and this is how you talk to it, was through this machine here. This is a teletype. This is just a big printer with a keyboard stuck to it and a cable that comes out you can plug in. You could talk to a computer from the same room like we saw in the last picture, or you could have it even at home and talk to the big computer through the telephone wires. You would have this. That's basically how we're going to interact and how we're going to learn to talk to our computer, is using a pretend one of these, which is the terminal on our Linux. So if you're in Ubuntu or Linux Mint, which is what I'm using here, open your terminal and we'll start. This is the Linux Mint shell, or the Ubuntu shell, which is actually the GNU shell running on the Linux kernel. You can also run the old Unix shell, and you can also run other Unix kernels as well with using this shell. The first original Unix shell was called the Bourne shell, and on a Unix system it was just called SH. And when Richard Stallman rewrote a new shell for a free operating system, he called his the Bourne Again shell, or Bash. So we were actually, in these tutorials, just for historical reasons and to get you good at it, we're going to go and use the old Bourne shell, which is still kept around, and you type SH in your Bash and that can evoke the Bourne shell, and there you go, you're in your Bourne shell. Bash has like a few improvements over the Bourne shell, but it's still good to know and understand how the original Unix shell worked, and that's why we're going to use the Bourne shell for these tutorials, for now anyway. So the first commands you're going to learn, there we go, there's the first one, date, just gives you the date and time, that's all. The next one, cal, gives you a little calendar. So there you go, that's two things that the shell can now replace from your desktop. The next one is we're going to use it as a file manager, so we're going to find our way around the Linux system and walk around. This has the idea that you're in a directory. That's where you are. So the directory you're working in. So to show which directory you're working in, you type pwd, print working directory. Remember, we're on a teletype, so that's why computers, everything is a print. Everything should be printed, but you know, even though we're using a screen, we're still pretending to use an old teletype. So there we go. Print the working directory, and it gives us /home/Carl. Now what that means is that where we are is Carl, which is my home folder, and then that is in a folder or directory called home, which has all the users' different folders in it, and that comes off one big folder which is just called slash, which is we call root. And that's the root folder, and in the root folder is the home folder, and in the home folder is the Carl folder, or whatever username you're on, and that's your home folder, and that's pwd will show you you are in there. So there you go. So now the next command we're going to learn is an old command that originally meant list segments on old computers before files, but now it just means list, so I call it list stuff. So list stuff, and is just ls, that's all it is. You might have used that before, but there you go, you get a list of the stuff that is in the working directory, the directory you're working in at the moment. And as you can see, some of these things could be folders, and some of them could be files. It's difficult to know, so we're going to have a different way of using ls, and I'm going to teach you about options and parameters and what they are. Every command, well, most commands, you can enter options. So we're going to make this give the ls the option of giving us long listings. So as we can see, there's a lot of directories there. You might have files as well in there, but if you look on the left, that's how I tell that little D on the left of all that stuff, and then there's the thing. So we know that desktop, for instance, is a directory. So we can list the contents of directory by giving ls the directory name. So we can list desktop, list stuff that's in the desktop folder or directory. And I'm very neat and tidy. I've got nothing on my desktop, so that's why it brings it back. So this is the two things, the options and parameters. So we give it long list. In this command, the L is the option or the switch, the desktop word is the parameter or argument, and we're basically saying, so we want to do list stuff, but we want to do it in a long format so we can tell what's what, and we're going to do it to the desktop folder that we can see in front of us. And that's all. It's got nothing in it. But that's basically, I just wanted to show you the difference between switches and parameters before we move on to some other commands.